My name is Charles Lewis Scot-Brown. I was born on the 31st of August of 1923 in a small town called Témsicaming, Quebec. My father, a World War I veteran, was a professional soldier in the Royal Canadian Engineers on loan to industry. That's why I was born in Témsicaming, Quebec. My father was the 6th generation and I was the 7th generation of soldiers. I started off in 1941 to go to Royal Military College, but then unfortunately military college closed. So by that time I'd already enlisted, and the Canadian Army was caught with a 17-year-old private soldier because I could not go to OTC Brockville until I was 19. So I took my recruit training in Brantford, Ontario, my advanced training in A10 Camp Warden, and then went overseas as a reinforcement to the 48th Highlanders, and then came back in 1943 for my commission. By that time, the 1st Division was going down to Italy, and I was very keen to go, and I was told in no uncertain terms that I was slated to go for commissioning, so I went down to Borden in England for pre-octo, and I left the regiment just before in 43, in the fall of 43, when they were getting ready to go down to Sicily. It was a difficult pill to take, but I wanted to be an officer. I thought I had the wherewithal to be an officer. And I had a great loyalty to the soldiers that I've been with. And this staff officer came up. This was in Borden in England. And he said, "I got great news for you, chaps. We're going to send you home for your commission." Well, my hand went up like a shot, and I said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, I can't tell you now, but it'll be quite obvious when you get on the ship." And when we got to Portsmouth, what was anchored out in the anchorage was the Queen Mary. So we got into the lighters and we were taken out there, and then when we got aboard ship, we found out that there was about pretty close to 2,500 German prisoners of war being cleaned out of England and sent over to North America. And we had to be the officer escorts for the German officers. So that's the reason they sent us back to Canada, much to our chagrin. And then I was in the funny stream of pre-officer training. When we graduated from in the sort of early fall of 43, they hadn't had the casualties in Sicily and Italy that they had expected, and there was a backlog. There was a jam, both in England and in Canada. And then one day they came in and they said, "The British Army are very short of officers, and any officer who would like to volunteer to get battle experience, there will be a thing called CANLOAN. You can put your names in." So almost all of our group volunteered for this. This was a way to get overseas and get away from this menagerie of literally a whole H-hut of officers living out of steamer trunks. I wanted to be an officer, I think, right from the start. I loved the military. I'd been a Wolf Cub, a Boy Scout, a rover. I'd been in cadets at high school, into the reserves, to the 48th Highlanders Reserves and the Medical Corps, taking a course with them, a stretcher bearer course, strangely enough. And I don't know, I just wanted to be in the Army, and I thought that I had the wherewithal to command troops in the field. So therefore it seemed like a normal thing for me to do. Back in the UK, and then I arrived in the Gordon Highlanders and 51st Highland Division, and we were in the Slough area, which is a suburb of London. We were doing specialized training to take a heavily fortified area. That's what they told us. We were taking the radar stations, which were highly fortified and very well done. The first inclination we got was all leave was canceled. And then all our vehicles were waterproofed. So we're in the concentration area, and then from there we went down to the Thames estuary. We were loaded onto what we called a mothership, and all around the sides were landing craft assault, which took about roughly 30 people in them, LCAs we call them. And we were in one of those, and we were briefed. And the maps came out, and they told us exactly where we were going, when we were going to land, and what we were going to do. And then, of course, we were all set. This was the 4th of June, I guess we went on that. The 5th of June was supposed to be D-Day, and then everything was put on hold for one day. The weather. We stayed on ship because they couldn't let us go off, because we already had our maps and we already knew what was going to happen. And they found out from Dieppe that once the soldiers have been briefed, you keep them away from anything and everything. And that's what they did to us. They kept us on the mothership. I was confident. I knew that I'd been well trained. I was taking in a very highly trained platoon of veterans. A lot of my platoon had been at the Battle of El Alamein. They had been right across North Africa. They had landed in Sicily. My platoon sergeant had a military medal. I had about 3 other military medals in my platoon. I had the hero platoon, as they called it in the Gordons. And here I was, a just turned 20-year-old lieutenant, never been blooded. So I wasn't afraid, but I had a degree of apprehension. We went over, it was pretty rough. We knew what area we had to go to, we knew what fields we had to go to, we knew where our concentration area was. There were guides on the beaches to pick us up. We looked around, there was some shelling on the beaches, so obviously the first thing you're going to do is get the hell off the beaches as fast as you can and get inland. There's an old saying, you know, the closer you are to the battle, the less you get shot at. And that was our aim. It was confusion. It looked like confusion, although people seemed to know what they were doing. The beach masters were out there, and the beach troops were doing a good job, and the boats were coming in, and they were getting offloaded, and there was, believe me, there was all kinds of activity. Their mortars were good. They would hit about 3 to 4 miles, the A echelon area behind the line, and in those days that was the beach. So you got off there and you cuddled right up as close as you could, because usually it was small mortars and small arms fire and machine gun moaning minis and Minnewaffers and stuff like that, which gave you lots of time to get down, and with any luck at all they'd miss you. But we landed about 11 o'clock in the morning, and then we did our assault. The 5th Black Watch and the 1st Gordons took the 2 radar stations, and the 5th, 7th Gordons was the reserve battalion. And we got our radar station. It took us about 2.5, 3 hours. And the 5th Black Watch had some trouble, so we stayed on our station until they consolidated theirs. And we helped them as much as we could, but they were far enough away that we couldn't really give them close support. So we hit our start line on time. Everything was on time, and away we went. And then, of course, they figured it would take us about an hour to take it. It took us about an hour and a half, and as I say, it was just starting to get dusky by the time we had everything secure and mopped up, and all the Germans taken off out of the radar sight, and getting the dead bodies out and stuff like that, and cleaning it up, and by all means looking for the counterattack. But fortunately, the counterattack never did come on that. I was commanding a full platoon of 37 men and myself, of which I had, off the top of my head, I think I had 3 killed and 8 wounded, which was very light. Again, I was lucky. Casualties are fast and furious in the infantry, especially when you're doing assault landings. Montgomery's remark to 51st Highland Division was he knew that our brigade was going in on D-Day, and he said, "You will be landing in Normandie." And he said, "Unfortunately, we will probably have 30% casualties." Fortunately, we did not have 30% casualties. We knew we were going to get casualties, but fortunately ours were not as heavy. The Americans were. You know, being in a battle is a very restrictive thing because you only really know what's going on 100 yards to your right and 100 yards to your left. And anyone says that they knew anything more than that is strictly telling you a story. Well, you know, if you figure you're going to get killed, you're going to get killed or you're going to get wounded. Our attitude was no matter how bad it is, somebody always comes back off that battlefield. And there hasn't been a battlefield yet that at least one person hasn't come off. Even the charge of the Light Brigade, people got off. People were wounded. They lived to tell the tale. So your attitude is, that person is going to be me. I wasn't the least bit worried. I knew I was going to come home. The big thing about war is you never worry about the bullet with your name on it. It's the $250,000 with the whom it may concern that'll scare you. You know, war is luck and knowing what you're doing.